You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Johannes Ekström of Avatar. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
I was like, I don't know what's going on, but you sound like a Godzilla monster right now.
Oh my gosh.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of the ToneMob.com podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. As you probably already know, I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Steve Rowe of the 60 Cycle Hum podcast.
Hello.
Hey there, buddy. What's going on?
Not much, just cracking open a brew and sitting down with you.
Oh, it rhymes. That sounds so nice.
Yeah, it was a magical rhyme that I came up with right now, off the cuff, completely.
Right.
I've never said it before.
Never, ever.
Nope.
So, as I usually start the show, which you are familiar with,
Yes.
how'd your day go?
It was all right. It was kind of a slow day, and I took like a 2-hour lunch at work to go do like a little side project thing. But that was okay because as far as I know, nobody is going to call me on it. So, hey, why not?
Unless somebody you work with listens to this episode.
Yeah. Well, I got back and one of my coworkers was like, "Did you just go to a job interview?" I was like, "Well, I went to an interview and it was a job, but it wasn't a job interview. So we're okay."
There you go. Nice. You were interviewing.
Yeah, well, it's like a market research thing where they pay people to come in and give your opinion on something stupid that we want to sell to the masses, and we will pay you for it. And they
gotcha.
actually pay pretty good for some of these things. So if anyone's looking for some side cash, look for your local market research team, and some of those jobs will pay. I mean, it's gas money or it's half your car payment or something sometimes. So it's a nice little thing to pick up every 6 months.
All I heard was fuzz pedals when you were talking.
But hey, buy some fuzz pedals. I can buy like 2/3 of a muffaletta now.
Ooh, hey, well, that's not a bad deal for
No.
Answering some questions.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that.
As long as JHS accepts Visa gift cards.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Well, there we go.
I don't know anybody that doesn't. I accept them. See, if you want nothing, you can give me Visa gift cards. I'll take them and I'll turn them into JHS muffalettas.
There we go.
Ah, very nice. Or you could go. Or you know what people should do instead?
What's that?
With either their survey money or their blood transfusion money or like blood donate, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They should go and they should like become part of the 60 Cycle Hum Best Friends Club.
Well, I wasn't going to say it, but if you want to get a shirt eventually, you can buy them direct from us, or you can support the podcast. So
there you go.
It's pretty cool.
Nice. Well, you know what? Let's not make the mistake that I made with Ryan, which was rambling off on tangents before we actually tell people. Well, a lot of people have already listened to his episode and will know who you guys are. But maybe there's a new listener tuning in, and maybe you should tell them what you're all about briefly and what you guys do.
Sure. This is why I wanted to go first. And of course, we originally planned to go first, but things happen. 60 Cycle Hum is a podcast that I started with your previous guest, Ryan Burke, and we do. I guess our focus from the beginning was kind of the used gear market. We were a couple guys who literally for close to a decade were just on AOL Instant Messenger or later Facebook Messenger or whatever, just saying like, hey, check out this stupid thing on San Diego Craigslist. Or, hey, man, you should go out and spend half an hour to go buy this thing because I think you can sell this in a week and make $100 on it. And after doing this for, like I said, almost close to 10 years, just between the two of us, one day Ryan was like, do you ever listen to podcasts? Do you know what this thing is, podcasts? I was like, no, tell me about it. And from there, it kind of just snowballed into, let's try to do something like this for ourselves, where we just take these conversations that we've been having for years and record them and see if anybody cares.
Right, and apparently there's a few people who cared.
Yeah, there's a few people out there. So it's been really insane. We've been doing it for it'll be like 2 years in January. And at no point when we started were we like, oh yeah, we're definitely like 2 years in. We're going to be looking back at this saying like, oh yeah, this was a lot of fun. At the beginning, we were like, let's just record 4 episodes. And if we get any feedback, then maybe we'll do a couple more and we'll see what happens. And it's just kind of, I don't know what normal podcast growth looks like. I've tried to look at it for other topics, but the guitar niche is so small that I feel like we're doing okay. Like, I feel like when you have people just kind of sending you emails every once in a while that you've never heard of before, that you've not seen anywhere that you've promoted yourself, and they're like, hey, I really love your show. Like, that's when I feel like, hey, I guess the word's getting out and I guess we're doing something right, because these people that we don't have any even like semblance of a personal connection with are listening.
Yeah, I kind of can relate to that because I just had that happen a couple times recently where people, most people and everyone listening for the most part knows that most people find me through Instagram, and
Right.
that was all very intentional on my part. It just seemed like the easiest way to build an audience to launch a show to, in a way that I could understand. There's better ways to do it, I'm sure, but it was just a way that I totally got.
Yeah.
And I had a guy that I was talking to today, and he was like, hey, I love your show, and because of it, I joined Instagram. I'm like, wait, what? That's different. I said,
Yeah.
How did you find it? Like, everyone finds it through Instagram. And he's like, oh, I just did a search, and like, that you had a cool logo or whatever, and I listened to your show. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. So that was kind of an interesting conversation. But
Yeah, that was a neat thing for us, was just after, I don't remember how long it was, but being able to sit down on Google and type in guitar podcast and coming up on a list. I think we were maybe on like the second or third page of Google, but it was like, hey, that's us. We're actually getting searched enough that we're showing up on Google. This is kind of crazy.
that, I can totally relate to that, because it took so long to be able to type into Google Tone Mob and have my website come up. For
Right.
the longest time, it was just Tune Mobi, some like Nokia ringtone site. I was just like,
gosh.
like, this is really like this has been up for a while, and I kind of have I don't SEO optimize at all.
Right.
Like, but I have an idea of how Google works, and I submitted my site to Google in hopes that I could type in Tone Mob and my site might pop up within a month. And no, it
Right.
didn't. It took forever. Oh, it was excruciating. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the terrible life of a podcaster.
Oh, I thought we were here. This was the Tone Mob SEO marketing podcast, right?
If it was, I would have nobody listening to it.
I don't know. There are some business podcasts that like have 4 episodes on the ground and have like 75,000 listeners apiece. It's a weird market.
I think that is because that is a big market.
Yeah.
I-
No, exactly.
that's just my kind of takeaway from it. Like I do listen to some of those, and I try to keep in perspective that like there's a lot more people looking for that,
Yeah,
and these guys are probably have done businesses before and knew how to get something like that off the ground. I had to try to keep it in perspective,
sure. Yeah, no,
market size.
absolutely.
So since we're not talking business, we're talking about guitar gear.
Sure.
We're gonna pretend that I'm gonna pretend to try to stay on topic.
Okay.
And
And I will
you
do
already
my best. I will do my best to derail you over and over again.
sounds
I mean,
good.
I mean to also stay on topic.
I'm used to it. I'm totally you already know. I don't have
Yeah.
to explain to you what my show's like. Anyway, um, so you know what's about to hit. Then
Yes.
I want to know
I was
your musical
12.
backstory. Oh, you
Uh,
were 12. Okay.
so I started playing guitar when I was 12, and it's kind of I started and then I stopped. When you're 12, and well, I'll start with this. My first guitar I got it was my grandmother's guitar, and she had bought a new one because this guitar was old and the action was high, and so she just wanted something new, and so she has this. She bought this like I mean, this was 1996, and she bought this Washburn acoustic guitar made in Korea or something, and it played great. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm 12 and I've never played the guitar. And I didn't really grow up in a musical family. My grandmother played guitar. My aunts were both like they sang. One of my aunts was in like some local kind of like regional country bands in Indiana. But my dad, no musical background. My mom, no music. So I was like, my idea of being a musician for my personal experience was I knew how to turn a radio on and off, and I knew how to tune from station to station, and that was about it. Um, but we went back to visit family, and I don't really remember how the conversation happens, but we end up taking home my grandmother's guitar. So I have a 1955, 56, 57, somewhere in there, Harmony Archtone, which is one of their archtop acoustic guitars. And I started playing guitar on that, and it's the action's bad, and I was taking guitar lessons from like the city rec center. So it's these group lessons with like 20 other people in it, and we're playing scales or doing like single note runs. I've got a Ernie Ball instruction book that has me playing, the melody to Sloop John B and Yesterday. And these are just songs that's like these are classic songs, but when you're 12, you just want to be able to pick up the guitar and strum a chord or two or three and have it make some sort of sense.
Right.
And all I was getting was notes. I didn't know what chords were. I didn't know how to make these sounds. I was just, I did 3 months of this over the summer and just ended up frustrated. So I kind of put it away for a couple years, and I went to a church camp and church music. This is church music. Now I'm now like 14. This is church music in the late 90s, so it's very acoustic guitar driven. I go there and all the music is acoustic guitars and lots of chords, very, very hooky songs, lots of like simple melodies. And so I get back home from this camp and I'm like, hey, I really like these songs. I can jump on the internet and like find chords on, I don't even know what websites there were back then. This is like before Ultimate Guitar. I think Ultimate Guitar had existed, but it wasn't huge. But it was enough that I spent the next 6 months learning chords and slamming away on this harmony with high action. Now that I was a little older, I was strong enough to like work with that. And after that, my parents were like, "Okay, you've spent the time to figure this out, and you can play like two songs to a level where we're not embarrassed to listen to you play it." So they were like, let's get you another guitar. And then, so I got my first personal acoustic guitar that was new. That was a Mitchell from Guitar Center, which was, I think, a house brand for them. And but it plays great. I actually still play that guitar on a regular basis. And then after that, they bought me a Fender Jag-Stang, which is kind of a weird electric guitar all around.
Yeah.
But, it's, I actually told my mom, I said, this was 2000, 2001, something like that. And I said, these guitars are worth like $250 on eBay. Don't spend too much money. Like, it's my first electric guitar. It's kind of a weird one, whatever. So she goes and she picks it up anyway from like a garage sale for like $200 or like $250. And I was like, oh, it's a little much, but okay, I'll take it. And, just go to town. And that was, I played the crap out of the guitar. I basically broke a pickup in that guitar from playing, or at least I thought I did. I broke one of the switches. It has those Mustang switches. And when you're 15, 16 years old and you're trying to be the next pop punk sensation, you smash the crap out of your guitars. And I blew one of those Mustang switches clear, like straight into the body. So I played with just the neck pickup for a while. But
oh no.
It's all right.
Smashed it right through the pick guard.
Yeah, so I couldn't turn the humbucker on, or I couldn't turn it on, but it was okay because it was one of those Fender humbuckers, and back then the Fender humbuckers were garbage anyway, so everything worked out. Fender single coil in the neck, it sounded awesome, and that's all I used.
The Jag-Stang, I'm trying to remember what kind of single coil are we talking about there? Is it like a Telecaster or a Stratocaster style single coil?
It's a Strat single. Basically, the now I got to think about this. The original design for the Jag-Stang was supposed to have some DiMarzio pickup humbucker in the bridge, and then a DiMarzio Strat single coil in the neck. And I don't remember specifically which ones they were, but they were all to like Kurt Cobain specs. He had certain pickups that he liked. They were DiMarzios. And instead what you got with this guitar were Fender made in Japan pickups. So already, like, that's the fact that you are putting a Fender humbucker in a guitar at the time is already a strike against it, because aside from the wide range humbucker, like Fender just, I don't know why, but they just didn't make good humbuckers. And I've played HSS Strats from the mid 90s, and that humbucker sounds like, I don't know, but I don't like it. But the single coil in the neck, like the neck position has always ended up being my favorite position, at least for single coil guitars. I just love the way it sounded. So it's very chimey and bell-like, and even though the Japanese pickups from Fender have always kind of been, some people love them, but they've always kind of been considered the weak point in the Japanese guitars. Like, this pickup in this particular Jag-Stang sounded fantastic.
Nice. So I sidetracked you a little bit because we started talking gear, but where did it progress from there?
I kind of just, I played guitar for a while, and actually probably about a little more than 10 years ago, like 12 years ago, I changed the church I was going to, and I came in and I said, I play electric guitar, and they were like, well, we have an acoustic player and a drummer, so the last thing we need is like acoustic guitar, electric guitar, but if you want to pick up the bass, then I guess we can put you on the team. So for the last 12 or so years, I've pretty much been playing bass, and I started playing bass out of necessity, which I feel like I've actually heard that is a pretty common story for bass players. But for me, it was something that I started with kind of just doing so I could be on the team. And
right.
It's really become like my main instrument. So a lot of times when people say like, oh, you play an instrument, I say, well, I've been playing guitar longer, but I've been playing bass more.
Gotcha. And have you found that you enjoy the bass more than the guitar now that you've stuck with it as frequently as you have, or is it guitar kind of still where your heart lies?
It's a give and take. I don't. I wish I played guitar more. I wish I spent more personal time playing guitar. Bass is almost like riding a bicycle. I mean, once you have the basics down of playing the bass, you just get back on. It's almost like playing like rhythm guitar. Like if you have a solid foundation in rhythm guitar, your chords and your chord changes and your rhythms, then it doesn't matter how long you haven't played rhythm guitar, like you're going to be able to get back on pretty quickly.
Right.
But with lead work on guitar, I always find like it takes me a few hours of really working at it to kind of like get back in the groove. Um, but the two instruments, I've always felt like people always, on these different online communities, always like, oh, bass, you're just playing four on the floor the whole time, like you're playing root notes, who cares? But I've always found that playing bass has made my guitar playing better, and in turn, like playing guitar has made my bass playing better. And it's melding like kind of the two instruments and thinking about like, all right, I'm playing bass, so I need to make sure I support the rhythm. But what if I take like a little electric guitar excursion over here and play something a little high, something a little, more melodic, just on this one part? Like, can I make it fit and still support the rhythm of the song? And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But that's kind of the thought process that I'm always working with because I'm experienced on both sides of the coin.
Right. I'm not like a experienced bass player by any stretch of the imagination. I can play one on TV, but that's about the extent of it. But I've always kind of explained to it like my wife for like 30 seconds. She was like, I think I want to learn to play bass. I was like, really? Oh, this is a dream come true. Like, she's always been really into music, but like, as far as learning something, she's like, has no interest in learning to play. And so when we first got married, she's like, I think I want to learn to play bass. And so I got super excited and tried to learn a little bit more myself so I could help her. And I've always kind of explained it to her this way, and that's the way I feel about it is, it's a much easier instrument to start playing songs with a band, but it's a very difficult instrument to get extremely proficient at and be like, that guy's a good bass player, type of thing.
Yeah.
Like I think it's more difficult to be known as and feel like you're a really excellent bass player than a really excellent guitar player. And I don't know if it's just because guitar players are more common and it's a more popular instrument, or what it is, but that's just my take on it.
I think a lot of it is it's one of these things where with guitar, I don't want to say you have more room to make mistakes because I feel like that's kind of like, it's too simple. It's really just because of the frequencies that you occupy. With bass, like you're in charge of both supporting the song and then maybe doing something a little more interesting. With electric guitar, like if you're a lead guitarist, you think about like, some of these like, you think about like Van Halen, like nobody thinks like about Van Halen's rhythm parts. All they think about is like the lead, the guitar solo on Eruption or whatever. Like nobody thinks about, well, maybe people think a little bit about the rhythm parts on AC/DC, but really at the same time, like let's look at this, let's memorize this lead riff that Angus Young is playing. So a lot of times bass is just in the background, and there's a lot of like really competent bass players that you just don't ever think about because what they're not ever doing is making mistakes.
Right. Or getting in the way of the song.
Exactly. Whereas like, you have plenty of songs where someone says, hey, we're going to take eight bars here, 8 measures, whatever. We're going to take a space here and we're going to put a guitar solo here. But you don't really think of too many songs where in the songwriting process, someone said, you know what this song really needs? This song needs a bass solo.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I can only think of one like bass solo that really sticks out in my mind, and this will probably tell you how old I am, but or rather how old I'm not, is like one of my favorite bass solos, one of my favorite songs, and definitely my favorite bass player and bass solo is on Rancid's Maxwell Murder.
So let's see. That makes you 16 in what, 1998?
Not quite. You're not quite. I'm a little bit younger than that. But I just have always loved that song. I still do.
Yeah.
Like I think that is like, I turn that on. I'm like, this bass playing here, solo aside, this bass playing here still don't get old to me. This is gnarly. Like,
yeah. And
when I think,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, when I think of like rip my face off bass, that's what I think of. And
sure.
I can't think of very many other people that shred the bass that way. I know that there are, and everybody who listens to this that's into prog rock will say, well, listen to this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. That's just what comes to my head.
Every Primus fan right now is rolling their eyes.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. He doesn't slap on that song. I forget.
Well, and that's so much of it's kind of interesting with bass is you kind of have like all these technique changes that are things that make the bass jump out. Whereas, with guitar, you've got pinch harmonics and you've got tapping and all of these different things. People just think of bass as like, oh, boom, 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 boom. But you've got like the guys who slap all the time, and there is some tapping on bass, and these aren't all techniques necessarily that I can or will use. I'm not really a phenomenal bass. I don't consider myself a good bass player. I just think like, well, I can find the pocket and sit in it. And for 95% of the music out there, being able to find the pocket and sit in it is what carries the song. And that's the thing that a lot of guitar players who transition to bass struggle with for a long time, is locking in with their drums and figuring out how to space out what they're playing, like you said earlier, to support everything else that's going on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like the bass player in my band, he played guitar kind of like off and on younger, but like for the most part in bands, like he played like, by himself, acoustic type of things.
Sure.
And probably some stuff I don't know about, but like 90% of the stuff that I know of him doing is bass playing in a band.
Right.
And so therefore, he does that really well.
Right.
Supports the song and locks in. And then once in a while, it's like he does a little noodly doodly something, and it's like, ooh, what was that? Do that again. Like, like that was awesome. It's just interesting how things come together when you have the right people involved.
Yeah.
First, mostly I'm talking about songwriting in that regard. But.
Yeah. So much of playing in bands and everything is just finding the right people. I mean, the church I'm playing at now, and I know I'm mostly a church player. I've been in 2 or 3 different bands. I've helped out, like I've met people through just the local music scene where I've like done 2 or 3 guest shows, but for the most part, like I'm a church guy, and I play church music, which for the most part is really simple. But the guys on my church team are guys that I've been playing with for 10, 12 years, who, every time someone new comes in, they go like, man, I wish I could jump in the groove with you guys. Like, you guys just have it all. Like, you guys just know what each other is going to play before you even play it. I'm like, well, that's what happens when you play together for a decade. I mean, if people's personalities mesh, everything's just going to come together, and you're going to be able to make music that like just makes people go like, geez, that was special. Just because you already know what the other person is going to do, 2 measures before they do it.
Right. Yeah, and I'm fortunate that way that I have played with most of the same guys for a long time at this point, and we're all just, even if we're not playing together, that's who I'm hanging out with on the weekends. Like, it's like we're either jamming or we're hanging out talking about gear. Like, our wives think we're super nerds, which we kind of are, but like every time we go out to eat, all you guys are talking about is fuzz pedals. I don't care about fuzz pedals. Oh, I'm so sorry. They're magical. Gee
They are.
whiz.
They are. I need more of them in my life. Let's be honest.
And I think that pretty much goes for everyone. I don't know. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that has enough.
Well, some people think they have enough, but it's just because they haven't figured out how to use them yet.
Right. Yeah, you gotta have the more. I like Jay Mascis doesn't even have enough fuzz pedals. That's just my opinion. Everyone, the correct answer for how many fuzz pedals you need is X equals your current amount of fuzz pedals, and Y equals 1, and the optimum amount of fuzz pedals is X plus Y.
Exactly.
That's just how it is.
Yep. Which means
how many fuzz? Oh, go ahead.
Well, that means I need another one because I only have 2.
Oh, you need to step your fuzz game up. You got to.
Ryan is really the fuzz obsessed one. I've been more the delay obsessed one. So I've gone through, not a ton of delay pedals, but I've probably gone through as many delay pedals as he's gone through fuzz pedals. But I think maybe now's the time for me to start playing more fuzz.
I think so. I mean, don't worry. The same formula applies to delays also. so you're fine there. That's an area that I'm lacking in. I'm lacking a little bit of the delay game. I need to step that up. I think I only have 4.
Oh, only 4?
Yeah, I need more. Gotta have more.
Yeah, you need to use them all at once.
Oh, I have.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm kind of a psycho. One of my favorite things to do is to take things that you shouldn't stack that many of in one go and do it anyway, just because. So, like a couple nights ago, I took like a bubble font Big Muff.
Okay.
And I ran it into... No, excuse me, I'm getting this backwards. I had like a medium gain overdrive. I think it was my Sweet Honey. And I ran it into my Big Muff, which is a pretty normal thing for me to do.
Right.
And then I ran that into the Moleko Chaos. And then I ran that into the Mr. Black, the Black Limited Distortion. And it made about as much noise as you would think it would, which was a lot. And there were a lot of square waves involved. It was it was quite a face ripper. But I do that kind of stuff all the time. So
I've actually been I don't remember where I saw this or who I was listening to. I might have been listening to someone's podcast. I don't remember. It might have been your podcast, actually. The more I think about it, it probably was. I wish I could remember who was the guest, but they suggested running high gain to low gain instead of the opposite. And so I started doing that recently, and it's actually I get why I've been running low gain to high gain. So basically my drive setup right now is I've got a fuzz pedal right off the bat. It's a Fox Tone Machine clone. And then that runs into a boost. It's a fairly clean boost. It's probably got like a high mid bump in it. It's kind of got that ZVEC super hard on thing going where you turn the knob and it crackles.
right.
And then that's running into right now it's running into a big ear NYC woodcutter into my vault.
Oh, those. Oh yeah, I'm excited. I want to try one of those.
Yeah, they're great. They're a little different. Honestly, I feel like it's a little different from at least the Rat 2 that I have, but it's still like a phenomenal standalone mid-high gain distortion. And then I've got that into my volume pedal into a Tube Screamer clone that I own. And I had those flip before, but running the the woodcutter into the tube screamer is a phenomenal sound, because instead of like normally you take like when you go low to high, you're kind of taking like whatever the low is doing and you're running it into the high gain,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of just like blowing that up with the high gain. But what you get going the opposite direction is just shifting where your EQ centers are, and that really kind of changes the way the two pedals play together. So with the woodcutter into the tube screamer clone, what I end up with is this like super long sustain that's not like overly gritty if I decide like I'm going to throw in a chord here instead of like a single note run.
So it's like it's very clear. It's a distorted, clear, like
Exactly.
type of sound.
Yeah.
It's defined.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's interesting. It's something I've messed with. I don't generally screw around with orders too much when I'm talking about trying to dial in an overdrive or a distortion sound. But for some reason, I will play with fuzz orders all day. I mean, I have plenty of opportunity. I'm not sure if that was my show or not. Oh, now that you mention it, because I'm trying to remember like who would have said that, but I forget a lot of things.
I want to say it was either Small Sound, Big Sound or Stephen Pettyjohn, but I don't know. It was a while ago.
Actually, that does sound right. That I think actually you're correct. I think that Brian Hamilton did mention that. Now that you say that, I think that is who you're speaking of. So yeah, that's interesting. That's something I've done, but I don't really remember what the results were. So I'll have to kind of go in there with a more conscious, effort and see what happens.
Yeah, it's something worth a shot. And it's something that we always kind of say over and over again at 60 Cycle Hum is there's no bad tones, there's just wrong tones.
Right.
If you have the right context, like a tone is usable, but if you're not in that context, then it's garbage. I mean, think about how many songs start off with some kind of like high cut thing to simulate like an AM radio or whatever, right? You hear that just on tons and tons of songs, where the first 15 seconds of the song is some guitar riff where it sounds like an AM radio. You would never use that for an entire song, but for that 15 seconds, it is the perfect sound. I'm using air quotes here, it's a bad tone, but for those 15 seconds, it's the perfect tone.
Yeah, I've been talking to some people before about how sometimes like a bad tone is what you need, which
Right.
it sounds kind of dumb, but like big old scoop muffs and all that stuff sounds great by yourself. But sometimes it doesn't fit. Like you totally disappear. And a lot of people already know that. That's kind of not a new information, but it can be applied elsewhere too. And the answer isn't always more mids. It's just where do you fit in the mix? Just find that spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes that spot's kind of ugly by itself.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I've been in a lot of situations where the answer was more mids. But yeah. That just made me think of we used to do, Ryan and I used to run a do-it-yourself venue. We had this band come in that was great. They did like video game songs, and the guy was playing a Line 6 Spiderhead, and he ran on the Insane channel. And
of course.
I mean, he could have been pumping 1,000 watts. With the way his thing was EQ'd, you never would have heard him over the rest of the band. Because it was just so terribly mid-scooped that I told him, I like, turn it up more. Can't hear you. I would go up to the amp after the set and go like, oh, okay, well, when you run your mids at 0, that's why no one. And then, if you were standing right in front of him, you probably could have heard him just great. But he was running a 4x12 in a 20x20 room at the biggest. if you threw something with mids in there, it would have killed everybody at the volume he was probably trying to hit. But because he scooped all the mids, you couldn't hear it through the front row of bodies.
Yeah, that's a definite fact. I mean, the guitar is a mid-ranged voiced instrument. So,
Yeah.
if you take all that away, then it's a not voiced instrument. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get why that sounds cool, and I understand, why playing by yourself usually doing that for high gain stuff sounds cool. It does. Um, but your tone, the worst tone in the world, is the one that nobody hears.
Yeah.
So, like, you could be the most amazing player, but if you can't hear, if nobody can hear you out in the room, then you're kind of doing nothing. So keep that in mind, boys and girls. The audience needs to hear you first. So I don't know. I feel like I should have that little "the more you know" thing. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
But so here, let's talk about. Well, since you got probably a couple rigs you could talk about.
Sure.
Let's talk about your bass rig first.
Um, so the bass rig that I'm using now is I don't own any of this stuff. Actually, we have a house rig, and it's just a Galen Kruger Backline 600,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know why it's called the Backline 600 because it's a 300 watt amp.
Right.
I guess maybe it'll do 300 watts per side, but I don't know. I haven't figured that out. And it's going into a PV 1820, which is a huge bass cab. It's got two 10s up top and an 18 on the bottom.
Cool.
And the hilarious thing about it is it's not a particularly low tuned 18. So it doesn't actually push low end that well. But it pushes it well enough that you actually don't hear the low end until you're like 6 or 10 feet away from the cab.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, so I run that. I actually use the same pedal board for guitar or bass. I just use different effects, or I just change settings. Um, and then right now I'm running a Yamaha RBX 760 bass that I picked up for like $80. And this is very much in the 60 cycle hum way of doing things. I bought this bass for like $80, and I took it home, and one of the pots was missing. Well, this is an active circuit, so basically what it didn't have was, I think it was an active circuit. So what it didn't have was the treble boost. It was
Okay.
supposed to be pickup blend, master volume, treble boost, bass boost, standard 2-band EQ for bass. So I bought some art. It was an Artec. So I didn't want to pour a bunch of money into it. So I bought an Artec preamp, and I couldn't get the thing to fit in the cavity. I didn't want to drill it out, so I just said heck with it. I took that out. Just bought 4 plain old A500K pots and wired it Les Paul style. So I've got volume, volume, tone, tone without a switch on this bass now. And I've always been a traditionalist with bass. So I bought this for a long time. I was playing a USA Fender Jazz Bass 5-string, and I actually picked it up for $300. But if you want to hear more of that story, I guess you're gonna have to listen to 60 Cycle Hum for a while, because I mentioned it a few times, but I don't know what episode it's in. But
Shameless plug.
yeah, just a little plug there. I don't know what. What spurred it, but I decided that I wanted a backup. And I think a lot of it was that being a church player, sometimes I was like, oh, sometimes I need to get under that low E. But most of the times I didn't. So I just wanted some kind of like other 4-string bass. I found this Yamaha RBX 760 on Craigslist for like $80, and I picked it up. The preamp was like missing part of it. I think it only had like 3 of the 4 knobs. So I bought a replacement, couldn't get it to fit in the cavity because it was too big. And I ended up just gutting the whole thing and setting it to like Les Paul wiring with volume, volume, tone, tone. Finally get this thing up, start using it, and it just played so well that even though like I had always been kind of against non-traditional looking basses, I just figured like it plays good, it sounds good, I should just use it. So I ended up selling off the jazz bass, and now I'm just using the Yamaha all the time, and it's cheap enough that I kind of just leave it at the church, and whoever wants to play the bass can come in and borrow it, and it's never an issue. Because if it goes missing, like I'm out, I don't know, $130. Not a
Right.
big deal.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, I spent more money on my delay pedal.
Pedals, pedals,
Yeah.
pedals, pedals, pedals. So what? Let's talk about your delays. Why don't we talk
Sure.
about those?
Right now, my board, I've got that, my drive section I kind of already described. After that Tube Screamer, I'm running into a Caroline Guitar Company Kilobyte. The Havoc switch on that pedal
Yeah.
is the coolest thing I have ever seen on a delay pedal. The ability to basically say, I don't have to turn a knob to start oscillation. I can just push a button down and it will start oscillating. And in turn, what you can do with that, because it basically becomes like a semi-infinite sustain switch that you can sort of play as its own instrument. Just because like you can oscillation, you just tend to think of like that's a delay pedal going out of control, or that's some kind of analog effect going out of control. But because it's foot switchable on the Kilobyte, you now have control.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start it. You can basically actually get it to sit at the same oscillation level, effectively until your foot falls off. It's really cool. I run from that into a Boss DD5. I've owned the DD5 and the DD7, and I just can't get away from the DD5. I've used that pedal for so long that it kind of like resides in a special home in my heart. And I run out of that into a Earthquaker Devices Afterneath.
Oh,
Just
yes.
their reverberation machine, which is just, I'm still trying to figure out that pedal. It kind of feels like if I don't carry the manual with me, I'm just never going to remember what all the knobs do because it's a little crazy.
I love that thing.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a good one. Yeah, you're talking about the Kilobyte. I have not got to try one of those. It's super high on my list because I love the idea, and a lot of it is because I have another pedal that has a similar function. And I mean, it is the same idea. The Solid Gold Effects Electroman.
Okay, I've actually I didn't contact them just because it's a pedal that's been out for a while, but I was thinking about trying to get one of those because we had aside from doing the podcast, we also do YouTube demos, and we had a demo idea that would have been perfect for that pedal, but we kind of just decided to hold off on it because we figured something new would come along that we might be able to use it for that was better. But yeah, I saw that delay. I don't know a lot about it.
That's one of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of that company. I've talked about it before, and have been for years. But the Electroman's super cool because, and I think this is a very overlooked feature, and I can't remember if I've talked about it before or not, but I think I have, is delay pedals that have effects loops. It's got an effects loop in it, so you can run whatever you want, and
Right.
and it only affects the repeats.
Yeah.
So it's such a good time. I've used a Digitech Whammy on the repeats. I've used I like setting a nice overdrive in there, like super light setting, and then
Right.
that causes they call it the warp switch to be much more sensitive.
Gotcha.
and yeah, you get these ridiculous sounds. Like if you just like you say, if you can play it like its own effect, where you step on that and you have this sustain. So I'll be like, I'll
Right.
use it for like a lead work, and then it's kind of a mild delay setting, maybe even like slap
Hmm.
back, and then I'll get to something I really want to emphasize and step on that at the same time, and holding it just as that like crazy.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I love it. And I guarantee you the kilobytes just as rad, because
Yeah.
they make great products too. So over at Caroline, so I'm got to get my hands on one of those pretty soon for sure. So what kind of guitars are you playing then these days? We talked about your bass.
Sure. Guitars, I kind of tend to grab things out of the stable at random. It's never like I never think, oh, I've got this set list. What guitars are going to fit it? It's Saturday night. What guitar do I feel like playing tomorrow? My main guitar is a parts Telecaster. I don't know what half the parts in it are. Well, I don't know what the body is. The neck is a SQ serial Squire, so it's about a 1983, 1984 Squire neck. It's got these super jumbo frets on it, which are kind of weird. And then that guitar has a Seymour Duncan vintage staggered single coil in the neck. So that's a Strat pickup in the neck position of a Telecaster.
Mm-hmm.
And then a Seymour Duncan, I think it's the SH5, the custom in the bridge position, which is a humbucker. I'm not exactly sure what the humbucker is because it doesn't have the tags on the back anymore. But I know it, like it's got the Seymour Duncan stamp. It just doesn't have the little sticker that says what model it is.
Right.
But I did my best to verify. As far as I can tell, it's a SH5. So that's probably my main electric guitar. If I'm not playing that one, I'm probably playing. Well, I mentioned the Jag Sing earlier. I don't actually play that one a ton because of 24-inch scale. It's a little funky, and I'm not a huge fan of the dynamic vibrato that Fender made, which is the Mustang vibrato.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also on the Jag Sing. So if I'm not playing the Telecaster, most of the time I'm playing. I've got a Fender Contemporary Stratocaster, from which is another Japanese Fender. And it's just your typical Fender. It's from it's a contemporary standard, but somebody replaced the Schaller bridge that was on it, which is this crazy bridge. They just took it off and replaced it with a 6-screw vintage style trem.
Gotcha.
So it kind of kills any resale value on it, but also meant that when I bought it, I was able to get that Strat for $100. The guy
Oh,
just had it off. I was in college. I skipped class. I was on Craigslist in between classes, and I saw it, and I said, "Oh, Japanese Strat for $100. Never going to see that again. Guess I'm not going to class today."
right.
So I picked that up. So I'm usually playing one of those two. I've also got a PV Generation from their back when they were making those in the U.S. So it's about a 1989, 1990. It's got the PV noiseless noiseless generation set, which is a kind of a Stratty Telecaster pickup set. That's a fun guitar. I've got that one for free off of Craigslist. I've got a Epiphone Les Paul Jr. with a P90. I brought that guitar to church as a backup and ended up playing it because it's an Epiphone. It's a cheap Epiphone. It feels like a cheap Epiphone, but the P90 in the bridge position is like that's a magical sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what other I've got a. I think the only other guitar that I haven't mentioned is I've got a Squire Bullet, also made in Japan. So it's the small body Telecaster headstock neck. That thing is tiny, and I need to do some more testing on it because I think I might need to replace the input jack.
The input jack's cutting out on you a little bit there.
I plugged a cable into it from let's just say it's a cable, not to put the company down. It's a cable from a company that sells cables for very cheap from their rather large online retail store.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it is a great looking cable. But I don't know if it's the cable or the guitar. I can tell you that the jack on the guitar is old. Like it is just, this guitar is like, I don't know, mid 80s. It looks 30 years old. Actually, the body and the neck are in great condition, but this jack just looks like garbage. And I plugged this cable into it, and the cable just was shorting out constantly. I didn't have time to try a second cable. I just swapped out guitars into a guitar that would support the cable better.
Right.
And it worked. But then the next week I used the cable again, and the cable didn't work. So now I don't even know. I don't know if it's the cable or the guitar. I just haven't had time to test it out. And when you've got other guitars in the stable that are ready to go, like sometimes things like that just kind of fall to the wayside.
Yeah, I understand. I totally get it. So, you guys have a really like different, and I talked about this with Ryan briefly, but you guys have a really different like kind of idea with gear than I do in some regards, where you guys are always like doing the flip thing and
Right.
and that kind of stuff, and I'm like, sell gear, huh? like I don't I've told everybody before, I've sold one guitar in my life and I regret it. It was a sweet guitar, and I didn't really sell it. I used it as partial trade for my melody maker, but
Sure.
and I actually posted about it today because I found a picture of it. May even be the exact same guitar. I can't tell, but somebody sold this old Japanese marquee. I bought it at a shop here in Portland, and it had 4 pickups, and they were all individually switchable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it had a trem on it, but the arm was missing, and it was a short scale, which I wasn't like super fan of.
Yeah.
But it had an amazing feeling neck, and it sounded killer, and it was very fun to play in like a garage rock type of way, and it was a perfect guitar for playing with lots of fuzz, because I could rock out like at a ridiculous level with it, and then you know, if there's a big rock and roll ending in the song or something, I could take the guitar up, and it sounded great when you screamed into the pickups. So
Yeah, I just remembered I have one of those. This is the guitar that I always forget about. I have a guitar that was made in the Philippines, and I haven't set it on fire yet because it's the only guitar that I have with microphonic pickups.
Yep. I love the microphonic pickups for that kind of stuff. It was just so fun to play, and I traded it for this melody maker, and then it was still in the shop for, I should have just ponied up. I didn't. It was a partial trade, so I should have just ponied up like the $175 or $200 or whatever it was. But I was like, oh, the wife will like it better if I trade. And
Yeah.
and so I did the partial trade, and now I'm like, no, that was a horrible mistake. And it was in the shop for a long time. I could have bought it back, but I just like didn't.
That's gonna be a hard guitar to find again, dude.
I know. That's why I'm so mad. I'm so mad about it. I never sell gear.
Yeah. No, so here's the thing with flips for Ryan and I. Is that, when I sold that jazz bass, it took me months and months of thinking about it before I put that thing on the market to sell. Because I wanted to be really sure, like, that I wasn't going to sell it and then automatically be like, oh, I regret this. And part of the deal I came to with myself for selling that guitar is I'm going to sell this, and the money that I get for selling this is going to be used to start flipping gear. So, in that time, like, basically what that gave me was I sold that bass for $800, and that was $800 of play money. That wasn't money that, like, it wasn't, I need to sell this bass because I gotta pay a bill. It was, I'm going to sell this, and I'm going to use this money to turn into more gear and or more money, depending on how things play out.
Okay.
So when I flip, like when I want to buy, when I see something, for example, the kilobyte, I got a decent price on the kilobyte, but I wasn't like, I don't, I didn't buy that with plans to turn around and make money on it. Like I bought it thinking if I get a good price on this, then if I ever down the road want to sell it, then hopefully I can get pretty close to the same amount. For me, flipping is all about seeing something that someone is selling for dirt cheap for whatever reason. Either they don't know what they have, or they know what they have and they just don't think it's worth that much, or they want to sell it fast, or whatever. And buying it, and in a lot of cases, I end up buying a guitar, and the reason the guy's selling it dirt cheap is because it is covered in years of dust. And so, I'm buying a Fender Mexican Stratocaster for $200. I'm spending an hour restringing and cleaning the thing up and trying to make it look as close to clean as possible. And then I'm putting it back up on Craigslist for $300 and seeing what happens. Most of the gear that I've sold isn't gear that I've ever owned long enough to form an attachment to. And a perfect example of that actually is, for me, is the Jag-Stang. I talked about it before. Like, that was my first electric guitar. My mom paid $250 for it. I'm looking at it right now going like, I could maybe get $600 for it.
Right.
Maybe a little more for the right buyer, maybe a little less because it does have like a scratch in the back. I don't know. But somewhere around like $500 to $600 I think is reasonable. But despite the fact that I have not played that guitar in front of another human being in 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, doesn't matter because it's my first electric guitar, and it's not going to get sold unless things get really desperate, or that guitar like is suddenly worth $2,000. Then maybe I'll think about it. But until then, like that emotional attachment is real.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. On the other hand, like, and that's the same reason, I said I've got my Boss DD5. I owned a DD5 and a DD7 at the same time, and I traded my DD7 to a guy who said, well, I'll take either of your delay pedals. That DD5 was my first, like, digital delay that I really loved.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the DD7 in just about every way is a superior delay to the DD5, I kept the DD5 because it's mine, and I didn't want to let it go. So there's definitely the whole flip thing can sound kind of cold and callous, but the reality is it's more about taking advantage of market trends. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you buy a Klon KTR for $280 and nobody wants to buy it.
Right.
So I'm actually really thinking about just taking a big loss on that thing soon.
Actually, yeah, I would have thought that would have been a good flip too, when you got it. But yeah, I was just as wrong as you, I guess. So
Yeah, I think the batch I bought on was the first in a series of batches they released like 2 or 3 months in a row. And the reality is that the Klon market went from, I think at the time there was basically the Centaur. I mean, the Centaur has been discontinued for years. So at the time there was the KTR. Every time there was it was released. There was the maybe the Oxblood was out at the time from Keeley. There was the J Rocket Archer, and that was about it.
mm-hmm.
And shortly after that release, which was in January of this year, was when people started dropping dropping Centaur clones left and right. Matthews released, Matthews Effects, I think, released the Architect. The Soul Food was already out because the Soul Food was out before Christmas 2014. And in the last like 10 months, the market has just become clone saturated.
Oh yeah, big time. Like huge time. I know of some more that are coming too, and it's like wow.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't think that's going to be a tough thing to oversaturate. I think I know there's a lot of them, but at this point, it's going to become pretty much like whose company do you like are into the most? Like, are you a whatever fan you happen to
Yeah,
be? You know?
exactly. And so, I think there's still some room in that market. Wampler just released the Tumnus not too
Mm-hmm.
long ago. Do you know what the date this episode will drop?
It's going to be a few weeks. I don't have an
Okay,
exact date, but it'll be a
so
few
in a
weeks.
in a few weeks, as long as it's after November 17th.
I know what
But
you're about to say.
okay, 'cause did Ryan already talk about it, or are you just in the know?
I know I just am in the know, which is
Okay,
weird, which is a really weird thing to say.
um,
I'm new to being in the know.
yeah, so November 17th, which I guess if since this is coming out afterwards, will be when Mojo Hand drops the Sacred Cow, which
Yep.
is their clone style pedal. So everyone's getting in this, which is great, I think, because everyone's got a little different take. Of all the ones I've tried, with it really is just four: the KTR, the JHS modded Soul Food, the Shelly Ponyboy, and the Mojo Hand. They're all a little different from each other. They're all the same style, but they're all creating a distinct sound within that style, which is really how the tube screamer market has been forever.
Right,
You
exactly.
know,
It's just which
so
one do you want?
yeah, so it's not a bad thing unless you bought a KTR from Humbucker Music last January with the intention of flipping it over the summer.
Yeah. Or I imagine Bill Finnegan's not super stoked on it.
No, oh, and there's some conversation going on about that because apparently Klon LCC just became a registered company again, or maybe for the first time. I don't really know what that story is. There's some rumor that Bill Finnegan might be getting back into the game in over the next few months.
He
And if
totally
he
should.
and if he does, it's going to potentially change the game with guitar effects, at least with analog effects.
I've wondered for a long time, like, I mean, I don't know his story at all. I'm not super familiar with it, but I've wondered, the Klon's been a mythical thing basically since its release. Um,
Yeah,
I've been like shocked that I mean, obviously he had hand in the KTR, but other than that, like, I'm like, I am shocked that he doesn't do something, because it would automatically sell. Like,
yeah. I don't know it. I don't recall exactly what his personal story is and why he's not making more of them. But it's kind of this pedal that's become the Dumble of the overdrive world, where it's this guy who made a few of them, and I know when Bill makes centaurs now, he just sells them on eBay, and he sells them to like support his neighbor. Like he doesn't even sell them to like make money necessarily for himself. He sells them because like he's got a neighbor that needs some financial assistance. So he's being a good neighbor, and he's selling a dozen centaurs at $2,000 a piece on eBay and giving all the money to his neighbor.
that's that's pretty awesome. I
Yeah,
didn't know about that.
it's
So,
I don't know what the exact details are, but that's basically it. That if people are listening and they want to know more, and don't fact check me because I guarantee you at least some of what I said was wrong. But if you jump on and Google Bill Finnegan Klon, that story, and I know Bill Finnegan Klon neighbor, that story will come up.
well, that's pretty awesome. I had no idea that he was doing that. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
that's interesting. It makes me wonder. Like, I have no clue. This is all just me completely speculating out loud. Like, what's that guy been up to other than that? Like, I
I,
mean, you know what I mean? Like, he has this
yeah,
brand and this knowledge of how to build something rad. Um, that it has the whole effects world just buzzing, and he's not, other than like that helping his neighbor. That's amazing, but like he's not doing anything with it, and it's a very interesting mindset. I wonder, like, what is he doing then? Is he like a
yeah.
Batman or something?
He's just waiting for the effects world to really need him, and then he's going to come back. I honestly I have no idea. I know I've seen the rise and fall and rise ish of different pedal people. Paul, just one guy who offhand I know, Paul Cochran, almost like actually he stopped making the Tim really, and only makes the Timmy because
Mm-hmm.
of some things that came up, and sometimes like I don't want to say it's easy to build pedals, but it's not. If you're making, once you figure out what you're doing, the pedal making part isn't prohibitively difficult.
Right.
I don't mean that. That's not a knock on anyone who makes them, because, I've every attempt I've made I've modded some stuff, but every attempt I've made to build a pedal from like even instructions and random parts like hasn't exactly worked out 100%. I mean, it's difficult, but once you get everything hammered out, like it's kind of a rinse and repeat. The business side of the pedal industry, and I think, actually, I know Josh Scott mentioned it when you interviewed him. That's a whole other set of traps to negotiate. It's a whole other minefield. And so, I think a lot of these guys, they start building a pedal and they get some success with it, but they got in it from the beginning to build a pedal and kind of have fun with it. And so the business side of it becomes completely unappealing to them. And so I think in some cases and again, I don't know if that's necessarily the case for Bill Finnegan. I know, when Paul Cochran stopped making the Tim and started focusing solely on the Timmy, that was part of it because Dan Electro had cloned the Timmy, and that he almost just quit over that because he just didn't like the fact that this other import company, Dan Electro, makes some great stuff, but the reality is they were cloning a bunch of high end pedals, and the Timmy is very reasonably priced at $130.
Yeah.
But people were like, why should I buy a Timmy when I can get the Dan Electro transparent overdrive for $40 or whatever? And that's from a building perspective, when you're putting your personal time, your personal sweat and blood and burning yourself with a soldering iron and the hours spent just putting in the 4 bottom screws with a screwdriver and all these different things. Like that's a hard thing to decide. I'm going to go into battle against a company that's just using robots to make pedals and making and selling them for 40 or $50, even though it's my intellectual property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could really understand that being super difficult for some people. And it was interesting when I talked to Brian Wampler. I made a statement that like, well, there can't be anybody successful that successful in the pedal business that doesn't like the business. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not going to name names, but I know a few that they started out as their hobby and their passion, and now they basically hate it. They just do it because they have to at this point.
Yeah, I think if you kind of pay attention to what's going on in the industry and paying attention to how different companies interact with social media or how they handle their customer service, you can kind of figure out who the guys are that really love their customers and who the guys are who just kind of tolerate their customers. And all of these guys, honestly, like at least every single one that I've talked to, they all have times where they're just like, why am I doing this? Because like I said, being a pedal guy is you're building pedals. It's for a lot of these guys, it's something they really love. But the business is just like, why am I dealing with customers every day who are giving me lame excuses? Why am I dealing with credit card issues and all of these different things that they have to deal with because they're small business people?
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Most people who get into building pedals or building musical, equipment in general, they do that. They get into the creating and the building because they love creating and building, and
Yeah.
and oftentimes business stuff, while creating and building a business is a project in its own right, it's kind of a different endeavor. And if you don't have the desire or want to do that, it could get turned into a kind of a just a job at some point, and that's very unfortunate for something you love to become something that you tolerate, you know.
Yeah.
So, well, Steve, you know what I'm about to say.
Yeah, honestly, I just finished my commute, so I've got to.
So, well, that is quite a coincidence. I'm sure the listeners have finished their commute also,
Yeah,
and
or
now,
the dinner is cooked, or whatever else they have going. It's midnight, and they have to turn off their phones before it has like the gremlin curse, and
mm-hmm.
uh,
No, that does happen. Don't laugh about it.
don't feed your phone after midnight, kids.
That's right. It'll. I wonder how many. You think that I just had a weird thought. I know I said I was going to close this out, but I just had a weird thought. I thought about this the other day. Like, I'm getting to the age, and that I'm starting to realize that stuff that I grew up with, that there's kids that growing up that have never seen Gremlins, and
Oh,
that's so weird to me to think about that because I watch
don't.
Gremlins like on repeat.
So I work with I work as a guitar player, as a worship leader for a high school group.
Okay,
And I also volunteer with high schoolers for some other stuff. So a lot of like I work with a lot of teenagers, and a lot of these kids, if you say who's the Karate Kid, like if you tell me who's the Karate Kid, I say, oh, Daniel San,
right.
Ralph Macchio. You
Mm-hmm.
say that to them, they say Jaden Smith.
Ugh. Ah. Ah. Oh no.
So I know
Oh.
exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, it didn't. I was talking about my wife, talking with my wife about that the other day, and that's the reason I thought of it when you mentioned Gremlins, and I was like, I was just talking about Gremlins, like, like I don't even know if my sister's 5 years younger than me. I don't even know if she remembers Gremlins the way I do, and it's weird. I'm like, I don't understand the Mogwais, the electric
The
gremlin.
Mogwais.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the gremlin that was dressed as a girl. Like, come on, everybody's got to get on the gremlin train. So, I think that's as good a note to close out on as any.
Sure, why not?
Get on the gremlin train. So, Steve, do you have anything you want to, other than the podcast, do you have anything up and coming that you would like to plug in at right before we close off here?
Not that I can think of. I guess, if you have, I'm sure you have people listening who are industry people. 60 Cycle Hum will be at NAMM again this year at the Winter NAMM in Anaheim.
Nice.
So if you want to hang out with us, just get in contact with us. Let us know. We're going to be doing some interviews while we're there. We're renting a place up in Anaheim to do it. So it's going to be a ton of fun. And, hopefully if you enjoyed this show, you can check out my show. Just Google 60 Cycle Hum or look for it on iTunes and, download a couple episodes.
There you go. Are you sure there's not like I don't know, maybe a YouTube channel you want to talk about?
Oh yeah. We have a YouTube channel that I've only been in one video for, so I don't really like to promote it, but I probably should. Our video guys, so Ryan and our buddy Adam, they do a lot of their video recording during the daytime during the week because they are self-employed gentlemen who have that kind of flexibility. And I am not. I am a slave to the man. And so I work 9 to 5. But anyway, we're on YouTube as 60 Cycle Hum, and we do gear demos. Some of them are new gear demos. Some of them are bizarre things. But if you want to actually just hear a little snippet of what we do on the podcast, we have a bunch of like kind of short episodes in a YouTube format where it's just a photo in the background and you can listen to us ramble and play the guitar poorly.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks for coming on, Steve. Really
No
appreciate
problem.
you taking the time. And as always, everybody, for Steve, I'm Blake. Good luck and good tones.
See ya.
Bye. All right, folks, that's the show for today. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you to Steve for coming on. It was a very enjoyable chat. The links to 60 Cycle Hum are in the show notes, so hit that up, check it out, and enjoy yourself. Also, hey, you like the show. I mean, if you don't like the show, you've listened this long for... I don't really know why you've listened this long if you didn't like the show. But if you don't, I'm sorry. I really am. I hope maybe I can make it up to you in some way. If you do like the show, however, you know what to do. You've heard it by now. iTunes reviews, maybe another iTunes review. Maybe if you can con your grandma into leaving an iTunes review, that would be so sweet. Anyway, iTunes reviews, they'd be great. Thank you very much. And of course, there's tonemob.com/store. There's new goodies being added in there on a fairly regular basis. We got the Obsidian picks in stock now, alongside the shirt. So those are pretty sweet. I think you're going to want to check those out. I really like those, and that's all I'm using these days is stone picks. So go ahead and check that out. And of course, there's the tonemob.com associate links. Anybody you choose to buy from in there through that link will give a little back scratch. So thank you very much if you've already done that, and most importantly, thanks for listening. I hope you all have a great week. One last thing before we totally sign off here, I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.